Alright, so I'm going to show you how I like to winterize our trailer. I do it a little bit differently than a lot of people. For example, most people like to run antifreeze through all of their lines. Up here in the Pacific Northwest, it doesn't really get super cold in the wintertime. We definitely get below freezing, but it's not really super cold, and if it is, it's not super cold for that long. So I actually like to do a couple things that make it easy. I've done it a couple years in a row now and with no problems, but who knows? So if anybody else out there has pointers for me, I'm happy to hear them, because I'm still learning a lot about this trailer and just basically a lot about RV maintenance, and there are a lot of people out there who are total geniuses when it comes to this stuff. So we'll get to it. So this is the antifreeze that I use. I don't put it in the lines or the freshwater tank, as I said earlier, but I do use it for P-traps and our black tank. And so even though we're not using freshwater tank or the water lines, in the wintertime we will sometimes still use the toilet. We just have a jug of water next to it to flush with, and if we're going to go out camping in below freezing temperatures, I'll put a higher amount of antifreeze than when I'm just storing the trailer, just to try and help keep the contents of the black tank from freezing until we can empty it and flush it back out, and then put another small amount of this in there. So I don't end up using a whole lot of antifreeze in my process, so this jug has lasted me at least a year. I can't remember if I got this a year ago or 2 years ago.
Alright, so as you can see, freshwater tank is empty. I like to leave this valve open so that as I'm driving around, as we're going to different places, anything that's left in the tank will kind of slosh around and empty out there. Something I do after this, though, is I like to crank the trailer up as high as I can, and then I try to lower it as low as I can, just to kind of move water around in the tank and try and get it down into that drain.
Also, I just wanted to add, should be pretty self-explanatory, but your black tank should be drained as well. When I drain my black tank, afterward I'll put a little bit of water in with, you can get these little packs. They almost look like dishwasher, powdered dishwasher detergent packs, but they're just dissolvable, and they've got enzymes in there that help to keep it smelling good, and if any little thing is left in there, it helps it process down a little bit better.
All right, now I'm going to move on to my cold and hot water drains now that the fresh tank is empty. So you're going to want to open one at a time, and it's going to be these valves right here. You'll be able to recognize them because they will move into an elbow that goes down into the floor. It goes to a drain basically just out onto the ground. So here's our hot water drain. Over here is my cold water drain. This is a 2019 Tab 320 model, so I would assume they don't change the layout of these lines often. So everybody's should look kind of similar to mine, but just in case they have, that's going to be how you recognize them. Just that little elbow into the floor. So I'm going to start by opening our hot water. So I kind of missed the process of coming out here and checking the drain, but as you can see, drain's open. Those two white drains are going to be hot water and cold water drains. This little drain right here is for glycol if you're changing the glycol in your Aldi heater. So now that my hot water is done draining, I'm going to shut it off, and I am going to move on to the cold water drain and open that up. Cold water's done draining, so let's move on. So my cold water is done. The next thing I want to do is move over here to this little yellow valve, and what that's going to do is finish emptying the hot water system in the Aldi. As you can see, that line just runs to that cold water line and then out through this system here. So something I did just right before I close off that cold water valve, drain valve there, is I turned my water pump on. I guess my logic would say that the water pump can pump water through the Aldi, so maybe it'll help to purge some of that air out. I'm sorry, purge some of the water out of the Aldi using the water pump. All right, so now that's done, I'm gonna shut my water drain back off. Shut that. And then the next process would be to shut the hot water system here, just to isolate your Aldi, so that if you were to pump antifreeze through these lines, it wouldn't go into your Aldi, because that's no bueno. So by doing that, you shut the Aldi off there, and then you want to open up the hot water bypass valve here, and that's going to allow you to put antifreeze through these lines as well without it going into your Aldi. But since I won't be doing that, it doesn't matter as much. NuCamp does have a little article on their website that explains a couple of ways to run antifreeze through your system. I think the most simple way is just to put that antifreeze into your freshwater tank and pump it through these lines. But before you do that, you want to make sure you isolate your Aldi so antifreeze doesn't make its way into your hot water system, and then open up the bypass valve so that your hot water system can still receive antifreeze. Next thing I'm going to do is basically turn my water pump on and run air using that water pump, basically push air through the different lines to faucets, the toilet, the outdoor shower, things like that, so that I can just purge all the water out of those as well. So let's turn the water pump on. I'm gonna start with the shower head. I'm gonna take that off of there and just let it sit. Well, first, turn it on. In fact, you could even turn it on, or you could, let me see this here. You could completely remove the shower head so that it's open and free flowing down there. And I'll just open up these. There's all the water out of there. Try the hot water here. There we go. All right, my water pump is still on. I'm gonna do the toilet now. A little half pedal there so they don't stick up the place. All right, it's pretty much all water there. And then while I've got the toilet here, I'm gonna take my antifreeze. I'm gonna dump a good amount of that down into the black tank, and then just have a little seal there in the bottom of the toilet as a vapor barrier that doesn't freeze. All right, next up, kitchen sink.
Okay. A lot of that water you're still hearing is just water that the water pump isn't able to get up this high. We also heard it in the shower as well. Last one that we're going to do is the outdoor shower, because that is the lowest point. And my thought is, if we're draining, we want to finish off the lowest spot. Okay, out of my outdoor shower. I'm going to take the shower head out. I'm going to try and extend this as long as possible so that there aren't any loops up in the actual trailer. Lock him on. And open it up. So as you may have seen in the video, I went outside to the shower, turned it on, didn't get anything out of there. And with the pump running, it still sounds like there's some water in the system. So I came and I opened up this valve that we used to isolate the Aldi. And I'm gonna see if that helps. Let's see what we got here. Disconnect the head here. Alright. So I went to open up the shower head. I had no water come out. My guess is that the lines just drained earlier here, and so all we got out of there was air. So it's good enough for me. Okay, so the next thing I do, shut off the water. Then we're gonna come in here, and there is a little filter in the water pump right here. So I'm gonna get a little towel, hold it underneath there, and unscrew that filter so we can make sure that we've got all the water out of the pump. So as you can see, it's this little cap back here. And undo that. Put a little towel under it so that we don't drop water into parts of our trailer that we don't want to. So you can see there's a little bit of water in there, and little things that we don't want to make in, to make it into our faucets. All right, got that junk out of there. And put this back in place now that we know nothing's gonna be freezing in there. All right, that's that. All right, so now that that filter is clear of water, I was still getting little bits of water coming out of the faucet. So I think that there's just a little bit of water down in the water lines to the sink. And so basically I'm just keeping my pump on, building up water, or building up air pressure in the lines, and then just waiting a little bit, building up air pressure, and then every so often in the faucet. And then once I do that and it's all air, I should be done. We'll wait one more time. That's what I'm looking for. Not really hearing a whole lot of water down in those lines. Maybe a slight crackling of water. But around here, that is, I don't think that's enough to really cause any problems. It hasn't caused any problems for me yet. So flip off the water pump. I want to move on back into my system here again. We've got the Aldi isolated from the rest, and then the hot water bypass valve on. What I like to do, since I'm not putting antifreeze in the system, is I like to open these drain valves. A little air move through there. Hot water valve.
So I like to open those up so that, again, same thing with the freshwater tank, as we're driving down the road, as the trailer is moving back and forth, side to side, any water left in those lines can hopefully eventually, that water can eventually make its way to these drains and out of the trailer. Also, as we know, when water freezes, it expands, and so this, you know, again, I'm just trying to use what little common sense I may have, and to me that seems that if there's going to be water freezing and expanding in the lines at all, if I can have any kind of pressure relief there, that's my thought on it. Those of you trailer gurus out there can tell me if I'm full of it or not. That would be much appreciated. And since I've got the bed up and these are open, I'll give you a little sneak peek. This is our new system for our lithium batteries. I'd like to make a video eventually with the Tab Dad out there in Idaho, and he can kind of explain this in a way that makes more sense, as this is still something that I am learning, and I think I understand this particular system at about 75%, and I understand electricity probably 2%. So it'll be a good one to do out there with Mike. But basically we've got 2 lithium batteries here. We've moved them from the tongue box into here and connected an inverter there that I've run this through here from the inverter to the outlet in that corner. So when we're not hooked up to shore power, we can use that outlet when we turn our inverter on off of these batteries. So we're doing some troubleshooting right now, just making sure everything is working okay. And we had the batteries die, and we suspect it's because of a fuse, but we're trying to get them all charged up to make sure that that's the problem and it's not something else. So once we get this up and moving smoothly, effectively, and consistently, we want to make a video that kind of explains the process that Mike went through to help us install these. All right, the last step is to fill our P-traps with antifreeze. And the reason I do this last is because any water that I've drained out of the faucets that ends up in the P-traps, if I were to put the antifreeze in there prior to draining those faucets, I assume I would risk washing that antifreeze out of the P-trap, and then we stand to have a P-trap freeze. So that's what I do last. So that's what I do for our trailer. Oh, that's beautiful. As far as winterizing, again, I don't do it the way that they recommend on the NuCamp website, and I would probably recommend using antifreeze if you are unsure of whether or not your area gets too cold, but I don't believe ours does. And again, like I said, I haven't had a problem with it yet. So I just like to blow all the water out of it, make sure there's air in the system, and then leave drains open. That's worked for about 2 to 3 years. So that's what we do. If anybody out there has any recommendations on making the process smoother, or on mistakes that I'm making that I just have been lucky enough to not have to deal with the consequences of yet, that would be great. All right, thanks.